Hi guys. So we're going to be doing chapter 7, the theory of consumption. The learning outcomes, I hope you guys are doing well. So the learning outcomes for chapter 7, you have to be able to define utility and its importance in economics. Or I would advise you guys to get a calculator for this chapter. Just have a calculator next to you and a pen and a pencil or yeah, and a paper because you're going to be doing a lot of calculations. Yeah, okay, so the learning outcomes, you have to define utility and its importance in economics, distinguish between cardinal and ordinal utility, total utility and marginal utility, and illustrate diminishing marginal utility and illustrate conditions for consumer equilibrium, deviation of an individual demand curve, use marginal utility theory to predict the effects of changing prices and income. So let's get into it. Utility. Consumption is not an end in itself. The purpose of consumption behavior is to maximize satisfaction. Utility is the degree of satisfaction that a consumer derives or expects to derive from the consumption of a good or a service. It measures how, okay, it is a tool used to allocate scarce resources. So basically, guys, here they're just giving us some background information as well as explaining what utility is. So utility, it is a satisfaction that a consumer derives or that a consumer gets from consuming a good or a service. Right, it's the satisfaction that you get from consuming a particular good or a service. So here, um, so what happens in economics is that they deal with assumptions, right? They deal with assumptions. They rely mostly in assumptions. So what happens here is that let's say for instance you are consuming a particular good. Let's say you're consuming your burger, right? So when you're consuming a burger, you're going to get some satisfaction from consuming it, from eating it. You're going to get some satisfaction. So and trying to measure your satisfaction, okay, fine, we might say it's okay. From consuming the first burger, your satisfaction was high. Then from consuming the second burger, maybe your satisfaction was also high, but not as high as the first burger. So to try and deviate from saying, Guti, when you consumed your first burger, your consumption was high. Your second burger was high, but not that high. Your third burger, your satisfaction was some maybe medium, and so on. To deviate from doing that, economics then try to measure that satisfaction by giving it numbers. Understand? To say it was okay, your first satisfaction is high, let's just give it 50. Your second satisfaction is high, but it's not that high. Let's give it 6, from 50, maybe 55. You understand? So they try to give you satisfaction numbers. Those numbers here, we call them utiles. We call those numbers utiles, which are used to measure your satisfaction. So utility basically is just the satisfaction that you get from consuming a good or a service. I hope that is clear. Let me just try to explain that one last time to say that, so in economics, they deal with assumptions, right? So in order to measure your satisfaction that you get, instead of saying that your first satisfaction was high, your second satisfaction that you got from consuming, for example, a burger, your second satisfaction that you got was high, but not that high. And when you consume the third burger, the satisfaction that you get was medium. And then the satisfaction that you get when you consume your fourth was low. And then you consume your fifth was lower, and so on. So to avoid doing that, in economics, we make assumptions and we give those high, low, medium, we give that numbers, right, to measure your satisfaction. So your first satisfaction, we just give it 50, your second satisfaction, we give it 65, and so on. So, and those numbers of which we give to satisfaction yakho in order to your satisfaction in order to measure it, we call that utiles, right? And utility is the satisfaction that you get. So to measure utility, we use utils, which is basically the numbers that you give to your satisfaction that you get from consuming that particular good or service. I hope that was clear. So, but the important thing that you have to just know here is the meaning of utility. I was just explaining so that you guys do understand what we basically discussing here. So let's move on. So they think utility, it is an abstract and subjective concept rather than a concrete, observable, and objective one. So it is a subjective concept. It's not concrete, it is not objective, it is subjective. Obviously, because with the example I made to say, Guti, when you're consuming your first burger, the satisfaction you get is, let's give it a number to say it's 50, right? That is subjective because it might happen that for me, my satisfaction is high, it's not even 50, maybe it's 100. And for you, maybe your satisfaction is just average, it is 50. You understand? So that is why I said from the first slide that in economics you work with assumption. We just give it a we just give your satisfaction any number that we feel Luti is gonna work for us in order to make whatever to deal with whatever conclusion we want to make at that time. So it is subjective, it's not objective. The unit to which you assign an amount of utility, therefore, are arbitrary units representing a relative value. There is no yardstick which utility can be measured objectively. That is why we use subjective concept. That is why we assume. So cardinal and ordinal utility, I'm not going to use this slide because I'm also going to not use this one because they're explaining the same thing. Yeah, I'm going to use this one. So cardinal utility and ordinal utility. So they're saying here, cardinal utility, it involves the idea that utility can be measured in numbers. So this is the one that we're dealing with here because I did mention, Guti, you have your satisfaction and then you're gonna give it a number so that we can measure it. So your satisfaction, your utility here can be measured in numbers. And it is an idea, guys, idea. And I did say we're dealing with my assumption here. So it's an idea that utility can be measured in numbers. And then the approach is quantitative. Obviously, value, we're dealing with numbers. So it is quantitative. And then it is less realistic. Remember from the previous slide, I did say, Guti, they mentioned Guti, this concept of measuring a utility is subjective and not objective because there is no yardstick of what you can use to measure utility. So it is less realistic. Because of that, it is subjective. And then the measurement are utiles. So these numbers that we use to measure our utility are called utiles. And then the analysis for cardinal utility is marginal utility analysis. Yeah, we're going to get into this as we progress. And then it is promoted by classical and neoclassical economists. So these are the economists that promote cardinal utility. So what you have to know with cardinal utility, I think it's very easy to remember this one because it is what we're actually doing in this chapter. It involves the idea that utility can be measured in numbers. I did say, Guti, for example, let's take your satisfaction if when you eat a burger. So we know, good, okay, the first burger, your satisfaction is high that you get from eating the first burger. From consuming the second burger, your satisfaction is also high, but not as high as the first one. So to avoid saying high, high, but not that high, we just give those high a certain number so that we can be able to measure it and to measure your satisfaction, the utility that you get from consuming those goods. And the numbers that we give are called utiles. So the approach is quantitative because we're using numbers. It is less realistic. So when you ask you maybe like differentiate, you can choose any of these, or you can just write the meaning itself. And then for ordinal utility, they say that cannot measure utility, obviously because cardinal utility, we can measure utility. So the side that we cannot measure utility, it involves the ranking. Can you see here? They don't say that it's the idea that, meaning that here they're not making any assumptions. It involves the ranking of different bundles of goods in order of preference. So they rank goods in order of preference, and ordinal from ordering comes from the word ordering. So they order the bundle of good, they rank the bundles of good in order of preference. And then this approach is qualitative because it doesn't work with numbers. It is more realistic. I think it's because this is not an assumption, because I don't see the word idea. So this one is more realistic. And then the measurement is ranks, obviously because they rank different bundle of goods. So the measurement is ranking. And then the analysis and difference curve analysis. Some of you might know about this, some of you might not, but we're going to do it very in chapter 8. We're not doing it now. So I think here you just have to know this difference, so that maybe if you are asked to differentiate, then you're able to say with your cardinal utility, it involves the idea that utility can be measured in numbers. I think it's also important to say this one, it involves the idea. So you don't just say it involves the measuring of utility numbers. Sure, go to this is an idea. So it involves the idea that utility can be measured in numbers, and this one, it involves the ranking of different bundles of goods in order of preference. And then you have cardinal utility approach, total and marginal utility. So cardinal utility approach, because we're going to use the cardinal utility approach here, meaning that we're going to be measuring our utility and giving the measuring utility by giving it numbers, those numbers which are called utiles. So your marginal utility, it is an extra satisfaction which a consumer derives from consuming an additional unit of a good. So your marginal utility, the key word here, it's extra. Utility obviously is the satisfaction you get. So marginal is the extra satisfaction that you get from consuming an additional unit of a good. So let me just give an example here to say maybe you're consuming your burger. So first burger you eat, you get 50 of your total utility. The second burger you get 60. Third one you get 68. I'm just gonna stop here. And then this is what? This is your total utility. So total utility of your burger, the first burger, it's 50. The utility, the satisfaction you get, the total utility of your second burger, it's 60. The satisfaction you get from your third burger, it's 68. And then now let's calculate marginal utility. Marginal. I'm just gonna write MU because I don't have enough space. MU. So in calculating MU, what I like to do is start from the bottom. You just find the difference here, So the formula to calculate MU is a change in total utility over change in units. So it's the change in total utility over the change. This is supposed to be a triangle over a change in quantity. Right. So, but then like you know that for your quantity, you have 1 here, you have 2 here, then you have 3 here, right? Because like you first consume 1 unit, you consume the second unit, you consume the third unit. So for your quantity, it'll always be 1, because if you say 3 minus 2, it's 1, 2 minus 1, it's 1. So that's why usually we just do it like this. We just say 68 minus 60, then we get our answer, we write it. We don't even use this, but then the formula is like this. A change in total utility over a change in quantity. So 68 minus 60, you get 8. So your total utility for your marginal utility for your third burger is 8, and then let me just use the text box. So 68 minus 60, so you get 8, and then you get 8, and then 60 minus 58, you get 10 minus 50, I mean you get 10, and then 50 minus 0, you get 50. Let me just get 10. Get 8. So this is your marginal utility, this is your total utility. Can you see now that this is the extra satisfaction that you get? So from 50, so when you consume your first burger, your satisfaction is 50, right? The total utility you got was 50. Your satisfaction was high, then we gave it a number, which is a utile, which is 50. So your total utility was 50 for the first burger that you ate. When you ate your second burger, your satisfaction was also high. And then now it's a 60. But from 50 to 60, what is the extra satisfaction that you got? It is 10. Because if you say 50 plus 10, we're going to get 60. So your satisfaction increased by 10. And that increased is called your marginal utility, which is an extra satisfaction which a consumer gets from consuming an additional unit of a good. And then from the second unit to the third unit, so your satisfaction also increased from 60 to 68. But by how much? So now I want to find out the additional units, the additional satisfaction that you got from consuming the third unit of, did I say burger? Of this product. So from 60 to 68, what is the satisfaction that you got? Is 8, because you say 68 minus 60, we got 8, which is your marginal utility, which is the extra satisfaction which a consumer gets from consuming an additional unit of a good. So you got 8. So yeah, that is your marginal utility there. And then your total utility, they say here, the total satisfaction which a consumer derives from consumption of a particular good over a period. So your total utility is your total satisfaction that a consumer derives from consuming a particular good over a period of time. So the key word here is that with your total utility is the total satisfaction. And then your marginal utility is the extra satisfaction. We can move on. Let's move on. So here you have your marginal utility. They're saying the same thing. They're saying here your marginal utility. Okay, let me just move these. So they're saying here your marginal utility is an extra or additional utility that a consumer derives from consumption of one additional unit of a good called marginal utility. You guys know this. And then this is the formula I showed you, but remember here we always have one, but like you should know the formula just in case, I don't know, just in case. In homogeneous or identical units of a good, if homogeneous or identical units of a good are consumed one after the other, the marginal utility will decline until it reaches 0. So remember from the thingy, the example I did, your marginal utility was decreasing, but then it didn't reach 0. So let me just give another example. So let's say you're consuming your burgers here. This is your total utility. So your first burger, your satisfaction is 50. The total utility is 50. Second burger, it is 60. The third one, 68. The fourth, 68. Let's say now your satisfaction is the same. And then 48, yeah. So, and then your marginal utility, I'm just gonna. So guys, now you're consuming your burger, right? So this is the first burger you consume. Your total utility is 50. The second burger you consume, your total utility is 60. The third burger, your total utility is 68. The fourth burger, your total utility remains at 68. So now maybe you are full, then now you don't gain any satisfaction from eating the sixth burger. Hence your total utility is the same because maybe now you are full, and then your fifth burger that you eat, now when you hear you're already full, but you continue to eat the one, two, three, four, five, the fifth burger, you continue to eat. When you are full, guys, yeah, well, that is why now your satisfaction is decreasing because you're already full. And then when your total utility here starts to do what? To decrease. So let's calculate your marginal utility. So this person was already full but continued to eat. So you have your marginal utility, and then you're going to say 60 minus no, here that is why I like to start from the bottom because I always get confused. So we're gonna start from the bottom to the top, but also you can start from the top if you don't get confused. Just think equal to you have 0 here, then say 50 minus 0, so you're gonna have 50, and then continue. But let's just start from the bottom. So we're going to say 40 minus 48. Sorry, 48 minus 68, you get your negative 20, and then negative 20, and then you say 68 minus 68 0, this one is 0, and then 68 minus 60, that's 8, and then 68 minus 60, sorry, where am I? So 48 minus 68 negative 20, 68 minus 68 0, 68 minus 68, and then 60 minus 50, 60 minus 50, that is 10, and then 50 minus 0, that's 0. So am I correct? Let me just confirm. Yeah, that's 10, yeah. 8, 0, yeah. Okay, so this is your marginal utility. And you see that as you consume more, as this person consume more units. So just assume there's 1, 2, 3 here. Let me just write it. This is the first unit. This is the second unit. This is the third unit. 3, this is 3, guys. This is 4, yo. This is 4 and 5. This is the fourth unit, 5, yeah. So you can see now that when you consume the first unit, the total utility is 50, then the marginal utility is 0. Sorry, it should be 50 here. Why did I write that? Should actually be 50 because you say 50 minus 0, 0, or maybe it's because I said 50 minus 0. Here it's 50. For the first unit, you just take the total utility as it is, basically. So for the first units, when you consuming, when you eat the first burger, your total utility is 50 and your marginal utility is 50. You consume your second burger, your total utility is 60, and the extra satisfaction that you get is now 10, which is your marginal utility. You say 60 minus 50, you get 10. Then you consume your third burger, and then the extra satisfaction that you get now from consuming this third burger is 8. We say 68 minus 8, which is 8. Consume the fourth burger, your total satisfaction is still 68, meaning that you're not gaining any satisfaction basically here. You're not gaining any satisfaction from eating this, the third and the fourth burger. You should have stopped from the third, but because you are, I don't know, maybe you're greedy or anything. I don't mean that, but yeah, you continue to take the fourth burger, hence your satisfaction, your total utility basically is the same. And the extra satisfaction that you are getting is 0. You're not getting any satisfaction now. You are full. You understand? You should stop eating you should stop eating these burgers and just maybe put them aside for your sister or your friend. So that is why now, because your marginal utility, the extra satisfaction that you are getting is now 0. And then you consume the fifth burger, and then now because you are full, your total utility starts to decrease. Hence, your marginal utility is negative 20, because if you say 48 minus 68 is negative 20, you're not getting any satisfaction. Here we said, Guti, you're experiencing disutility because now you are dissatisfied. You're no longer getting any satisfaction, but dissatisfaction. Which is why when your marginal utility is negative, said Guti, that is where you experience disutility. And when your marginal utility is 0, that is where your total utility is at its maximum. Is at its maximum. You can see here, Guti, when you can, this is 68 is at maximum. This is the highest total utility you'd get. After that, it starts to decrease. And here, when your marginal utility is positive, you can see that your total utility is increasing. You understand? And then when it's negative, it's decreasing. And also you can see that your marginal utility is decreasing. As you consume more goods, as you're consuming more white burgers, your marginal utility is decreasing. It was 50, it is 10, it is 8, it is 20, it is negative 20, meaning that your satisfaction that you're getting, it's decreasing as you're consuming more, as you're consuming more of this particular good. Which then must also tell you that your total utility is increasing, but at a decreasing rate, because the additional satisfaction that you are getting is actually decreasing. So while your total utility might be increasing, but it is increasing at a decreasing rate. I'm not sure if now I'm confusing people, but let me try to explain, Kuti, why am I saying that? Because your marginal utility, you can see that the extra satisfaction that you're getting from 50 to 60, it's 10. From 68 to 60, it's 8. The extra satisfaction that you're getting is decreasing while your total utility is increasing. So your total utility is increasing at a decreasing rate, because actually your marginal utility is decreasing. The extra satisfaction that you're getting from consuming the extra units is actually decreasing, leading to the law of diminishing marginal utility. But we're going to see that as we move on. So I was just trying to explain this part where they're saying that the marginal utility will decline until it reaches 0 as units of a good are consumed one after the other, meaning that as you're consuming more of a pizza from 1, 2, 3, 4, sorry, I said burger from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, this particular product, your marginal utility is what? It will decrease until it reaches this, it reaches 0 and then negative. So yeah, let's move on. So we get to the law of diminishing marginal utility. I've already explained this. Like let me explain it this side because I don't want to remove these figures here. So what they're saying here is that diminishing marginal utility states that the marginal utility of a good or a service eventually declines as more of it is consumed during a given period. So let me just go here. So you can see that the marginal utility eventually declines as more of a good is consumed. As you consume more units, your marginal utility is doing what? It is decreasing. So that is the law of diminishing marginal utility. That as you consume more units of a good, your marginal utility over time in a particular period, it does what? It starts to decrease. And then as the consumer consume more units of a particular good, the consumer's total utility in respect of that good will increase at a decreasing rate. I did mention to say that your total utility here, it will do what? It will increase, but at a decreasing rate. Because the additional here, the additional extra unit that you are actually getting is actually decreasing. So total utility is increasing at a decreasing rate. In other words, the addition to total utility from consuming each additional unit of a good will decrease. So the addition, which is marginal utility in this case, is actually what's decreasing. So they gave you this example. Let me just remove this. So yeah, let's move on. So here they're illustrating the law of diminishing marginal utility to say that when you eat your first burger, you are really satisfied. You can see this person is happy. Then you decide to buy another burger. You see, the person is still smiling. So, but not by so okay. So you decide to buy another burger. This burger also adds to your satisfaction, but not by so much as the first burger. And then the third burger, you said is the third burger. You buy a third burger, but this was too much and you reach this utility. So meaning that this is negative something. You fall sick, your satisfaction is decreasing. So now you're just forcing things and you are already full, but you continue to eat the third burger. Then you experience what this dissatisfaction or this utility, and your satisfaction will start to decrease. So also they give another example here to say, imagine a man in the middle of the desert who is very thirsty. So let's just go to this table. So this person is very thirsty. He's been in the desert for maybe I don't know, a year. So when you give him the first bottle of water, the total utility which is going to get is 20. And you see, we remember we're giving the satisfaction that he's getting, we're going to measure it in terms of numbers. So we're giving it, those numbers are called utiles. So the first satisfaction, first bottle, obviously is going to be so excited because he hasn't drank what hasn't drink, he has not taken any water in a very long time. So he's very thirsty. So the first bottle that he drinks is going to get 20. The total utility is going to be 20. The second bottle, total utility is going to be 32. The third bottle, total utility is going to be 42, and so on. So you can see that his total utility is increasing until here. Here, the satisfaction that he's getting is the same from the fourth and the fifth bottle. And then he shouldn't have taken the sixth one because already you can see how good he is full, but he continues. He's satisfied basically, but he continued to take the first bottle and then the total utility now starts to decrease. And then the marginal utility, remember how we calculate marginal utility? We say, okay, I'd like to start from the bottom. We say 39 minus 42, we get -3. 42 minus 42, you get 0. 42 minus 40, you get 2. 40 minus 32, you get 8. 32 minus 20, you get 12. Then 20 minus 0, you get 20. So this is his marginal utility. And you can see the law of diminishing marginal utility here, because as you're consuming more of the bottle of water, his marginal utility is what? It's decreasing, right? Meaning that the total utility is increasing, that you see here is increasing, but at a decreasing rate because the extra benefits that is getting is actually decreasing. So also we can conclude to say that when the marginal utility is positive from 20 to 0 and 2 as well, the total utility is increasing. No, from 20 to 2. The total utility is increasing. Can you see? It's 20, 32, 40, 42. And then when his marginal utility reaches 0, his total utility is at maximum. Now the total utility is at its maximum, He shouldn't be taking any water from now on because he's full. And then when marginal utility is now negative, where we say we're experiencing this utility, this person, total utility is now decreasing. It's 39. The total utility starts to do what? To decrease, meaning that now he's dissatisfied. That is why we're experiencing disutility. So when the marginal utility is negative, total utility is decreasing. When marginal utility is positive, total utility is increasing. And when it is zero, your total utility is at its maximum. So the law of diminishing marginal utility. So if you were to draw this curve of marginal utility, it is the curve is like this. It is downward sloping, just like the demand curve. That is why we say total utility, your marginal utility, the curve is the same as the curve of your demand, of the demand curve, because they are both downward sloping. So as you're consuming more goods of a service, or as you consume more goods or service, your satisfaction, it does what? It decreases. The law of diminishing marginal utility. And then you move on. The law of diminishing marginal utility. So here, this is your total utility curve, and this is your marginal utility curve. You can see that your total utility, it's increasing when your marginal utility is positive. You see here, until here, it's increasing, it's increasing, it's increasing, it's increasing. And then when your marginal utility is zero, your total utility is at its maximum. After that, it's going to decrease because now your marginal utility is what? Is negative. So remember here on your, what are these called? Your x-intercepts, we have your units. So the first units of what? Bottle of water, second units, third units, fourth. These are your units. And then here we have your utiles. Your utiles is a combination of your total utility and your marginal utility. So basically, you take this and this, the total utility and your marginal utility, and then they are here. So in determining how to write these figures here, you have to consider a scale of which you will use. So here they are using the multiples of 4, 8, 12, 16, so that they can include all the numbers, even the ones in between, you see. So they're using a scale of from 4, multiples of 4. So you can also use a multiples of 5, but just use a scale which will include all these figures here. So here you have your utiles, which is your total utility and your marginal utility. And here you have your units, basically the goods that the person is consuming. Keep in mind that when you're drawing this this graph, here you have O1. It's starting, remember, like when we used to draw our graphs, we used to say 0, 1, 2, 3, 0. Like this used to be 0 here. But you see now we have 1. This is because here the units, they start from 1 unit. But if we had 0 then 1, we're going to have 0 then 1, 2, and so on. But now because we're starting at 1, that's why our 1 is here. Yeah, so your graph for marginal utility is downward sloping, just like the demand curve. And then for total utility is increasing and then decreasing. Where your marginal utility is 0, your total utility is at its maximum. And then where your marginal utility is decreasing, your total utility, where your marginal utility is negative, your total utility is decreasing. The law of diminishing marginal utility, they just basically explaining what I've already explained here. Yeah, and also here, as well as with this one. So to say the total utility is the sum of all marginal utilities. Yeah, your total utility, guys, is the sum of all your marginal utilities. Let me just try to prove that so if you were to add all of this, they would give you your total utility. Yeah, you just add all of this, you give you your total utility. You say 20 plus 12 plus 8 plus 2. I don't know if you plus 2 and -3, but I'll just plus them as well. So you get 39. So marginal utility is the sum of all your is equals to, if you add all your marginal utilities, you get your total utility, which is 39, 39. So, and then total utility increase as long as marginal utility is positive. It reaches its maximum where marginal utility is 0. The consumer is set. I think they wanted to say satisfied. The total utility decreases when marginal utility becomes negative. When disutility sets in, average utility is the total utility of a product divided by the total units. So if you want to calculate your average utility, you take your total utility of the product, you divide them by the total units, meaning that you say your total utility is 39 divided by your total unit is total units of the product. So you add all the units 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 from 6, so it's 1, 2 plus 3 plus 4. So it's 21. So you just say 36 divided by 30, 39. And then more examples. So what I was saying, when your total utility is increasing, your marginal utility is positive. So they use additional utility, but additional value, it means marginal utility. Then when your total utility starts to decrease, your marginal utility becomes negative, where it is constant, your marginal utility is 0, then your total utility is at maximum. Yeah, I think they're explaining the same thing here as well as here. So you see here your x intercepts, they start from 0 because of this. It's 0, 1, 2, 3. So they start from 0 and then they go up. So this is your total utility. You can see it's increasing and then reaches the maximum, then start to decrease. It reaches the maximum where it should be here. Marginal utility to total utility 0, 0. So it's here. Your maximum will be here where your total utility is high. So 5 is 245 here. This is where your total utility will reach its maximum. So guys, don't cram that your marginal utility has to be 0 for total utility to reach its maximum. Because you see here, your marginal utility is 0 and your total utility is 0. So are you going to tell me that because your marginal utility is 0, then the maximum utility is 0 just because your marginal? No. Okay, that is the thing. When your marginal utility is 0, your total utility reaches its maximum. That is the thing. But here you can obviously see that the maximum is here because 145 is the bigger number here where your marginal utility is 5. That side it made sense because I think you had 148, 148, and the other numbers were less than 148, and we also less than 148 even if you go down, which is why it makes sense to say Guti, when your marginal utility is 0, your total utility was at maximum. Yeah, when your total marginal utility is 0, your total utility is not at maximum, it's just 0. It starts to go down, but it's at maximum here, where your total utility is 145 and your marginal utility is 5. So don't cram, guys. And then yeah, they also draw the curve for marginal utility. It is decreasing, as you can see. Yeah. And then these are the curves together in one graph. You can see when your marginal utility is decreasing, your total utility is increasing. And then when your total utility is at maximum, your marginal utility is at 0. Marginal utility equals to 0. Kanjan. Oh, okay. I think that was a mistake. I think that was a mistake because now 0 is, your marginal utility is 0, your total utility is 145. But you know that when your marginal utility is 0, your total utility is 145. Sorry, when your marginal utility is 0, your total utility is at its maximum. So yeah, and then when your marginal utility becomes negative, your total utility starts to decrease. The utility maximizing consumer, subject to no constraints, will consume 5 slices of bread where total utility is greater. So your total utility is greater here, so you would want to consume 5 slices of bread. So these are the questions. Utility from consuming a good is understood by economists to mean, okay, we already have the answers here, to mean how much satisfaction or benefit we get. Obviously, we know that utility is all about measuring our satisfaction. So this is the only option with satisfaction. So yeah, I take it. You look for the keywords, but also read, yeah, to see what the thing is saying. And then here, but team number 2 is the additional. We already know the answer, guys. Okay, let me continue. Is the additional satisfaction? We already know. A person receives from consuming an extra unit. So they gave us all the keywords here. So additional satisfaction and extra units. So this one is why it's marginal utility, because you said marginal utility is the extra or additional satisfaction that you get from consuming an additional good. So let me see, wouldn't be total utility because total utility is the total satisfaction. Wouldn't be diminishing marginal utility because this one, it just basically states that as you consume more good over the period, your marginal utility starts to decrease. Preferences, this word, I saw it when we were defining ordinal utility and cardinal utility. So this one is the keyword for cardinal to say we rank them in order of preference. So number 3, they say, which one of the following correctly explains the way in which economists view utility? So ordinal utility can be measured. Let me read the other options. Utility is a measure of satisfaction gained from producing, no, not producing. So this one is wrong. I was so convinced this is the answer, and then I saw producing, so this one is wrong. When consuming the same good, utility is constant across individual. This is also not correct. We saw that the person was consuming the same bottle of water, but the utility that he was gaining from each bottle was different. So this is not it. And then when consuming the same good, utility varies across individuals. When consuming the same good, utility varies across individuals. When consuming the same good, utility varies across individuals. I don't even know what this means, but the answer is A, guys. Ordinary utility can be measured. Yeah, because you guys said it, we measure it using utils. When consuming the same good, utility varies across individual. Utility is not the same across individual. Okay, let's continue. Number 4, at what quantity consumed will diminishing marginal utility begin? Remember, guys, diminishing marginal utility is basically where your marginal utility is decreasing by when it's where your consumption is increasing, but your marginal utility is decreasing. So where will you experience your diminishing marginal utility? So here you firstly have to calculate your marginal utility. That is why I say, guys, please get your calculators. Let's calculate. So we're going to calculate your marginal utility. So I'm just going to write here. Let me just write MU. Okay, should I write here outside? Okay, let me just write outside. MU. Okay, then let me just do this. Let me do this. Yeah. And then so Remember, guys, I said I prefer to start from the bottom, but you can start from the top. It's okay. So 70 minus 65, you get 5. Then 45, 65 minus 45, you get 20. Then 45 minus 21, get 24. Then 21 minus 10, get 11. I hope I'm correct. Then you get 10. Yeah. So the question is, at what quantity consumed will diminishing marginal utility begin? So where your marginal utility starts to decrease. So the first units, the thing is 10. Oh, when we're calculating the average thingy, let me just go back. We're calculating so guys, I just want to go back, I think I said something here. When you're calculating your average utility, you say your total utility divided by your total units. Your total units is 6. Because this is basically saying, see, this is the first unit, this is the second unit, this is the third. It's not like these are 2 units, these are 3 units. Mina, I said 1 plus 1 plus 2 plus 3. You basically, the total units here is 6 because you ended at the sixth bottle. So you're going to say 39, which is your total utility divided by 6. Do you guys see where I went wrong? So you don't add your units because this basically means this was your first units, like the first bottle you drank. This is the second bottle you drank. This is the third bottle you drank, and so on. So in total, you drank how many bottles? 6. So yeah, let me just go. I don't know what happened, but yeah, we all make mistakes. So I was here, and then so you can see now that when you consume your first thingy, okay, so the first quantity, your marginal utility is 10. Second, your marginal utility is 11. It is increasing. The third, your marginal utility is 24. It is increasing. The fourth, your marginal utility is 20. It's decreasing. And then they're asking at what quantity will diminishing marginal utility begin? 2024. So no, I'm just confused because they said here the fifth. The answer highlighted is the fifth. Diminishing marginal utility as you're consuming more, total utility starts to decrease. When you're consuming your fourth, the satisfaction that you're getting when you're consuming your fourth units, it starts to decrease because 48, 65 minus 48 is actually 20. So the additional satisfaction that you're getting is decreasing. And also here, now when you're consuming your fifth, it's actually 5. Mina, I think this is 4. I think it's B, but they say it's D. Okay, let me just continue. But guys, anyone, if you please text me or just write on the group when you, let me just go back. Yeah. If you do get why they say the answer is 5, is the fifth thingy quantity, please do tell us on the group. Or just on the comment section, because I am gonna post this on YouTube as well. Or just on the comment section, or you can text me. Yeah. Okay, so this one again, as more of a good is consumed, total utility, marginal utility, we know this, as more of a good is consumed, as you consume more, your total utility does what, guys? It increases, yes. And your marginal utility, it decreases, so it is D. As Sally increases her consumption of a good, she experiences diminishing marginal utility. If her total utility is increasing at a decreasing rate, yeah, we know this. Been saying this. Diminishes. Hey, another person would have chosen diminishes. as her, but then like it's not really diminishing. It's not going down. It's going down at an increasing. It's increasing at a decreasing rate. So don't be confused, guys. Increases as at an increasing rate. No, this one is wrong. Increases at a constant rate, I. So the answer is B here. Diminishing marginal utility will set in with the consumption of traditional beer. Diminishing marginal utility. Also, we say diminishing marginal utility occurs where your marginal utility is decreasing and as you consume more goods or services, your marginal utility is decreasing. So let's calculate your marginal utility again. So you do this, you do this. Okay, you guys already know the drill. Let me not do this. You already know how we work in here. Then we're gonna start from the thingy from the bottom. So let's calculate, guys. Let's use our calculators. So we're going to say 400 minus 420. I'm just going to write here, guys. 400 minus 420. 420, this negative something. So it's negative 20. And then 420 minus 420 is 0. This is where your total utility that is maximum. 420 minus 350, you get 70. 350 minus 270, 350 minus 270, you get 80. And then 270 minus 19, 270 minus 190, you get 80 again. Also, your marginal utility is the same. No, let me check. 350 minus 270. 270 minus 190. Also, yeah, it is 190 minus 90, you get 100. And then 90 minus 0, it's 90. And then 0 minus 0, it's 0. So this is your marginal utility, which is blue. They say in your diminishing marginal utility will set in when. So we need to look where your marginal utility is decreasing. So 90, 0 from 90, it's increasing. 100, it's increasing. 80, your marginal utility is decreasing. So it's here on your third unit, on your third beer. Sorry, on your third beer, your marginal diminishing marginal utility will set. And then what did I say? Third. Yeah, it's the answer is 3. So I think in that activity that we did, I think they were wrong. It's supposed to be 5th, not the 4th. Because you see here, it's what is happening? Oh, my figures, they moved because I scrolled down. Okay. Because you see here, 0, when he consumes 0 beers, his total utility is 0. When he consumes the first beer, his total utility is increased from 0 to 90. When he consumes the third beer, the marginal utility, marginal utility increased from 90 to 100. From the third beer now, the marginal utility decreased from 100 to 80. So this is where we're experiencing diminished marginal utility. From the third beer. So let's continue. Hey, more questions. Okay, they're saying here, marginal utility becomes negative with the consumption of the, let me just calculate this, because usually, oh yes, we did calculate here. We found Ruti, 400 minus 420, it's negative 20. So negative 20 here, your marginal utility is negative. So with the 7th beer, your marginal utility becomes negative. If you say 400 minus 420, you get negative 20. So that is why they chose D here. More questions. Based on the table below, you concluded that marginal utility, okay, let's just do it. Let's just do it, guys. For the sake of doing it, 20, and then here we got 0, here we got what? Let me 420 minus 350, it's 70. 7, and then 350 minus 270, it's 80. Or remember we got 80 twice, so also here we have 80. And then 190 minus 90, that is 90. Then we have 0. Oh no, we have 90 and then 0. 0 here. So yeah, that was fast. And then so they're saying that we concluded that marginal utility of the second traditional beer. So let's go to the second traditional beer. This is the second traditional beer. This is marginal utility. It's 90. Party is 270. No, the marginal utility is 90, so this one is not correct. Marginal utility for the fourth traditional beer. Let's go here. Is 60 utiles. No, it is not 60, it's 0. And here it's 420. The average utility of three traditional beers is 90 utiles. Three traditional beers. Um, oh, the average. So how do you calculate the average, guys? You take your total utility, you divide by your units. So let me see. If I say 270 divided by 3, it's 90. If you say 270 divided by 3, you get 19. Remember, guys, when you're calculating your average utility, you don't add all your thingy, your units. You see here, because they said from the advanced average utility of three traditional beers. So you just come here to your three traditional beers. Your total utility was 270. So the formula of average utility is your total utility divided by your quantity or your units. So or your total units. So don't be confused by total unit. Total unit just basically means what that unit they are referring to. Because this basically means what here consume the first beer. This is what this 2 is for, the second beer. It does not mean what you consumed 2 bottles of beer. It's the second beer. So it's still one beer, but just the second one. This one is the third beer. So to calculate the average, you basically say your total utility, which is 270, plus your total units. So your total units here, it's basically 1 plus 1 plus 1, which is 3. Then you say 270 divided by 3, you get 90. So this one is correct. Let's see the other one. What's the saying? They're saying average utility of 5 traditional beers is 80. So let's go to 5. So here you're going to say 420 divided by 5. You get 84, so it's not 80. Let's move on. Oh, these questions. Total utility is maximized when the marginal utilities are all 0. Okay, so here they say the marginal utility per rand spent is equal for all the goods. No. Now, if they're using the marginal utility per rand is equal for all the goods, this might be true, but also it has to be equal in all the goods, and also all the income must be used for utility to maximize. So this one is not complete. Okay, so B, they're saying the marginal utility are all 0. So you know that when your marginal utility is 0, your total utility is at maximum. Like here, you see when it's 0, it's 420. So total utility is at the maximum, it's 420. Also, this is the highest total utility from all these utils. So yeah, the marginal utilities are all maximized. The marginal utilities are all negative. Don't even know what these two mean. Okay, now deviation of the demand curve. So we're done with marginal utility and total utility, looking at their thingy, the questions and their curves. Now we're going to be looking at the deviation of the demand curve. So they're saying here, a rational consumer before purchasing a commodity compares the price of a commodity which he has to pay for with the utility of the commodity he received. So basically they're saying here, when you're purchasing something, when you're purchasing well, when you want to make a purchase, basically, you would have to compare, a rational consumer would have to compare the price of the thing that they want to purchase as well as the satisfaction that they get. That is how actually every person, Jay, that is how they decide to say, well, okay, I'm going to purchase this packet of chips, or I'm going to purchase maybe this chocolate. They look at the satisfaction they are going to get and also compare that to the purchasing power to say, well, okay, can I afford to purchase this? You understand? So that is what they're saying here. As a consumer purchases more and more units of the commodity, marginal utility diminishes. So as you purchase more of the units, your marginal utility diminishes. So long as the marginal utility of a commodity is higher than the price, the consumer will demand more and more units of it till its marginal utility is equal to the price. So basically what they're saying is that um if the marginal utility, if the satisfaction that you get, the extra satisfaction that you get from purchasing a particular product is higher than the price. So that's it, you're getting more satisfaction from that particular thing that you want to buy. So let me just say, for instance, chocolate. You're getting more satisfaction from the chocolate, and the satisfaction you get is higher than the price. You will continue to purchase that chocolate until your satisfaction is equal to the price. Then that's when you will stop. But then, like, if you still continue now to purchase that chocolate, even though your satisfaction is now equal to the price, you will then, basically, the consumer will lose. You would lose because you're basically now going to experience dissatisfaction where you say your marginal utility becomes negative. Remember from the previous slides that we looked at, if you continue to purchase even now, even though you are now full, like you've maximized your satisfaction, but you continue to purchase a particular product, you then becomes dissatisfied and your marginal utility starts to decrease. Then I want us to do the calculation. This will become more clear if we do the calculations. Okay, they say here, to put it differently, as the consumer consumes more and more units of a commodity, its marginal utility goes on diminishes. We know this, as you're consuming more, your marginal utility will decrease. It is only at a diminishing price that the consumer is willing to demand more and more units of a commodity. So they're saying here, if the price is decreasing, you're going to demand more of a certain commodity if the price is decreasing, which is true. Economies can be sometimes an assumption, sometimes it is something, sometimes the things like that we learn, they are true. Because obviously if your price is decreasing, you're going to demand more of a particular good, right? And then when marginal utility is equal to price, the consumer is said to be in equilibrium. So now they're showing us the curve of the marginal utility as well as or the curve of the demand curve to say they are both downward sloping. This is because um, with your demand, there's a purchasing power attached and also with your marginal utility, the one that we're going to be dealing with now. But also because of the law of diminishing marginal utility to say that as you consume more goods and services, your marginal utility will then will start to decrease. But there's also a purchasing power attached to your marginal utility because remember we said that here, we said it here, Guti, the purchasing power of a commodity. If the purchasing power, so the price is less than your marginal utility, the consumer still demands more of the units until the purchasing power, which is the price, is equal to your marginal utility. Then now we say the consumer is at equilibrium. So the consumer is faced with a choice among many commodities that he can and would like to pay. He therefore consciously or unconsciously compares the satisfaction which he obtains from the purchase of the commodity and the price which he has to pay. So if you're just buying one product, you will then have to compare the price of that product and the satisfaction which you would get from that product. Then if he thinks the utility of the commodity is greater than the utility of money, he buys the commodity. So if your marginal utility, if your marginal utility, um, if your marginal utility is greater than the price you're going to pay for that product, then the consumer would buy that product. So if the satisfaction that you're going to get is higher than the price, then the consumer would buy that product. If it's just one product. So if it's just one product, you basically look at the marginal utility and the price. If the marginal utility over the price is higher, then the consumer would definitely buy that product. And then he starts to purchase a commodity at a point where marginal utility of a commodity and its price are equal. So when your marginal utility and the price are equal, it means the consumer is at equilibrium. So the consumer will now stop to purchase that commodity. If you purchase further from this point of equilibrium, then the marginal utility of the commodity will be less than that of the price, and the household will lose. So that's what I was saying, that if you continue to purchase now after reaching your maximum or your equilibrium as a consumer, if you continue to purchase more of that particular commodity, now your price will be greater than the satisfaction that you're actually getting from that product. So you're no longer getting a satisfaction from it, but you continue to purchase it, meaning that the price is higher than your marginal utility. Then as a consumer, you will be a loser. You'll be a loser. Okay. A consumer will be in equilibrium with a single commodity, symbolically can when. So the consumer will be in equilibrium when your marginal utility is equal to your price. So therefore, your marginal utility determines what the consumer is willing to pay for a good. And then I want us to get to so your weighted marginal utility. So to get your weighted marginal utility, you basically say your marginal utility over price. So this is what you get, your weighted marginal utility, and then marginal utility for good Y over the price for good Y is 20. So you can see here your weighted marginal utility for good Y is greater than the weighted marginal utility for good X, meaning that for good Y, you're getting more value for money for good Y. So they're saying the weighted marginal utility is given by dividing your marginal utility for the unit by the price. The marginal utility per rand spent on good Y is greater than the marginal utility per rand spent on good X. You can see here, marginal utility per rand for good Y is 20, and the marginal utility per rand for good X is 10. Per rand Y because we have divided by the price of this good. So product Y gives more value for money than product X, because the marginal utility per rand is 20 and the marginal utility per rand here is 10. So consumer equilibrium, so the consumer equilibrium for two products now. So remember, the consumer equilibrium for one product, you just have to have your marginal utility being equal to your price for that good to be in equilibrium. For if you're just looking at one product that you're consuming. But then now for two products, say now you want to consume chocolate and chips. So the consumer equilibrium were two or more goods purchased. A rational consumer, in order to get the maximum satisfaction from his limited means, compares not only the utility of a particular commodity at the price, but also the utility of the other commodity which he buy with the scarce resource. So when you were looking at the consumer equilibrium for just one product, you had your money that so like you would have the means or the resource to purchase this product, right? And the price of this product and the marginal utility. So your marginal utility, it just has to be equal to the price. So the satisfaction that you get, it just has to be equal to the price of that product. You understand? So regardless of the resource that you have, so let's say you have maybe like 5 rand, and the price for this one is 3 rand. So your marginal utility should be equal to your 3 rand. For if you only if you want to buy just one product. So your income can be 5 rand and your price can be 3 rand. Your marginal utility also has to be 3 rand if you're just looking at one product. But now, if you want to purchase two products and you have 5 rand, right? I'm still going to use the 5 rand. So your income is still 5 rand, and your chips is 1 rand, and your chocolate is 2 rand. For this one now, if you're looking at two products, you have to use all your income. So, oh, but let's just you get what I'm trying to say as we read. And I also refer to the previous slide just to make sure that you guys understand. They're saying here a rational consumer, in order to maximize satisfaction from his limited needs, compares not only the utility of a particular commodity and the price, but also the utility of the other commodities which he buy with his scarce resource. Scarce resource here is referring to your income. So when you're buying two products, you have to compare the satisfaction you get from this product and this product, and also the price of this product and this product, and also compare that with your income that you have. So I'm just going to pause this one. So they're saying here, consumer equilibrium conditions. So when you're buying two products, there are conditions which must be met, or two or more. So all income must be spent. So you must spend all your income. Remember on when I went to that slide, I said that when you're purchasing just one product, your marginal utility just has to be equal to the price of the product. You know, your income will, like, we don't include your income. Even if you have 5 rand and the price is 3 rand, your marginal utility has to be 3 rand. But for this one, your marginal utility must be equal to 3 rand. Your marginal utility over price must be equal to 3 rand, and your income also must be spent, or your income must be spent. You guys are going to see this as we do the calculations, I think. And also, and this whole thing that they wrote here, I didn't understand it, but they basically mean your marginal utility per rand must also be equal, meaning that mu over p for product A must be equal to mu over p for product B, and all your income must be spent. These are the conditions that must be met. So they gave us the formula here to say ban, 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 ban. But this is the formula that I'd like to give you guys to say that your marginal utility with M utility for good X. I'll just put the good X in brackets for good X divided by price of good X must be equal to your marginal utility for good Y. Just gonna use Y and X divided by price for good Y. I'm just gonna use two goods. Here they used 1, 2, they used 3. And then this must also be equals to, the price. So let's say your good X was 2 rand, must be equal to 2x plus so let's say good Y was 1 rand, so it must be equal to R. Why doesn't know? Ish. Let me just continue from here. Must be equal to R. Let me say it was 1 rand, so I'm gonna say RY. And then this, when you add it, must be equal to your income. Gonna write Y. You know why income is denoted by Y value in economics. So, oh Jehovah. Now I would have to write it again. Ish. But you guys, so what? Let me just. So I'm saying here your marginal utility for good X must be equal to your marginal utility for good Y. Marginal utility per rand. Ish. Marginal utility per rand. So marginal utility divided by P Y. Also here divided by P Y. So your marginal utility divided by Py must also be equal to your marginal utility. This one should be X. And then this also must be equal to the price. So if your good X was 2 rand, this must be equal to your 2x plus, if good Y was 1 rand, it must be equal to R2, no, 2 rand times So if your good Y was 1 rand, this was equal to, which is this. If you add it together, they should give you your income. This is Y. Let me just write, should give you income. So guys, so let's say you have good X and you have good Y, right? And then they tell you, Ruti, they say good X is tea and good Y is chocolate. Let me just write that down because I usually forget the examples I use. So it's tea and chocolate. So, and they say, Guti, your chocolate is 2 rand and your tea, your chocolate is, sorry, your tea is 2 rand and your chocolate is 1 rand. So your tea is good X and your chocolate is good Y. You guys gave my example. Let me just write it here on the side. So you have tea, which is equal to 2 rand, and you have chocolate. I'm just gonna write choc, which is equal. Why am I writing in capital letters? Which is equal to 1 rand. Choc for chocolate, and then tea is 2 rand. So your tea is your good X, referring to your good X, and then the chocolate will call it your good Y. So guys, can you see? So in using this formula, you're going to say marginal utility for good X like this, marginal utility for good X over the price for good X equal to marginal utility for good B so this is your good Y over the price for good Y. Okay, we don't have that one. Equals to 2 rand X plus 1 rand Y. So after you've determined which yeah, this is going to confuse you. For now, just remember the formula. We're going to use it in the following when we get to the questions. Just remember this formula. You can write it down, you can take a screenshot. Yeah. And then let me remove it. So basically here, what we're saying is that when you have two products, for utility to be at maximum, for you to reach your maximum satisfaction, all your income must be used, and then your marginal utility per rand must be equal. So for marginal utility for product A must be equal to your marginal utility per rand for product B. Marginal utility per rand is basically marginal utility over price. So let's continue. I just want us to get to the questions. Okay, these are the questions. So this one they're saying, this is known as equal marginal principle or law of maximum satisfaction. So where your marginal utility per rand is equal to your marginal utility per rand for another product, it's also equals to your income. It's called equal marginal principle or law of marginal satisfaction. Suppose a person has 5 rand with him, which he wishes to spend on 2 commodities, tea and chocolate. Tea and chocolate are costing 1 rand each. So you have 5 rand and you want to purchase tea and chocolate. You want to purchase tea and remember guys, they say tea and chocolate, meaning that you want to purchase 2. You want to purchase them both. If they said tea or chocolate, then it means tea only or chocolate only, but and meaning that tea and chocolate. So tea and chocolate are costing 1 rand each, meaning that tea is 1 rand and chocolate is 1 rand. Remember, your income is 5 rand. So they gave us your marginal utility of tea, which is 10, 8, 6, 2, and 4. The marginal utility for chocolate is this. Total utility, you add all your marginal utility, you get your total utility of 30 for tea, and then your total utility for chocolate, you add all your marginal utility, you get 39. And then the example they're saying, a rational consumer would like to get maximum satisfaction from 5 rand. Tea and chocolate are costing 1 rand each. He can spend his money in 3 ways. He can buy 5 rand may be spent on tea only. 5 rand may be spent on chocolate only. 5 rand may be spent on both tea and chocolate. What is the total utility if he spends all his income on tea only? So the total utility if he spends all his income on tea only, it's going to be 30, because you can see total utility is just, you add all this, it's going to be 30. Then if you spend on chocolates only, it's going to be 39. You add all of this. I need to get to the interesting calculations. They say here, what is the total utility if he spends all his income on 40 and 1 chocolate? Oh, this one is very important. So 40 and 2 chocolates. So let's go here. If it's 40 and 2 chocolate, let me just use this. So 40 and 2 chocolates, what will be his total utility? So basically, you're going to add 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4. You're going to end here. Then you're also going to add 12 plus 10. Then you're going to add them together to get the total utility for consuming 40 and 2 chocolates. So you're going to say 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 equals to 28 plus 10 plus 12, which is 50. 50, they said 2 and 4. Is it 50, guys? If you're calculating, just say 10 plus 8 plus 4 plus 6, then 12 plus 10. Let me see what they got for 40 and 1 1 chocolate. Mina, I said 2. So 40, it's here, and then 1 chocolate is just 1. So you're going to say 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus 12. So it's 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4 plus 12, you get 14. And then 3 tea and 2 chocolates. So 3 tea, it's 6, and 2 chocolates, it's 10. So you're going to say 10 plus 8 plus 6, 10 plus 8 plus 6, and then you're going to add 12 plus 2. They said 2, right? 12 plus 12 plus 10, 46, and then, and so on, guys. I think you're getting it now. So if they say 2 tea and 3 chocolates, you want to calculate total utility. 2 tea and 3 chocolates. So you're going to say 10 plus 8 plus 12 plus 4 plus 8 to get the total utility. So total utility for 2 tea is 10 plus 8, and the total utility for 3 chocolates is 12 plus 10 plus 8, and then you add them, you get 48. So yeah, 48 and so on. So let's look at this one. It's saying here, by spending 2 rand on tea and 3 rand on chocolate, the consumer maximizes his utility to 48 utiles. So what are they saying here? Let me just go back. 2 rand on tea and 3 rand on chocolate. Okay, I think they're answering this first question to say a rational consumer would like to get maximum satisfaction from 5 rand. So this consumer can purchase, which combinations. So you look at where your marginal utility is equal. So your marginal utility is equal here and here and here, and also here and here and here. So 6, 8, 10, 10, 8, and 6. So when your marginal utility is 6, the consumer will purchase 3 tea and 4 chocolate. So let's see if he's going to use all his income. So he has 5 rand. So if he purchases 3, and each chocolate and tea, they're 1 rand each. So if he purchases 3 chocolates, he's going to use 3 rand. And if he purchases 3 tea, he's going to use 4 rand. And if he purchases 4 chocolates, he's going to use 4 rand. So 4 plus 3, that's 7. So this one is out. This combination is out. We go to 8. 8 and 8. So if he purchases 2 tea, he's going to use 2 rand. And if he purchases 3 chocolates, he's going to use, sorry, here he's going to use 2 rand and here he's going to use 3 rand. So 2 plus 3, that is 5, has used all his income. Okay, so we have this combination. Let's just look at the other one. Here we have 1 and 1. So the consumer can purchase 3 and 2. He can purchase 3 and 2. He can purchase, he can purchase all these combinations here, where his marginal utility is the same. But where he's going to get more value for money is if he purchases those combination here, 3 and 2. 2 tea and 3 chocolates. So let me see what they say here. By spending 2 rand on tea and 3 on chocolate, he maximizes his total utility by 48 utils. When he spends 2 rand on tea and 3 on chocolate, on cigarettes, I think they wanted to say chocolates, the marginal utility derives from both these commodities is equal to 8. When the marginal utilities of the two commodities are equalized, the total utility is then maximized as 48 utils. So let me just calculate here to say plus 12 plus 10 plus 8, you get 48. So if he purchases 2 tea and 3 chocolates, his total utility is going to be 10 plus 8 plus 12 plus 4 plus 8, which is going to get him 48. So they're saying he's going to get 48 utils. So basically here, the combination that will maximize the consumer's income or satisfaction is if he consumed three chocolates and 2 tea, because he will use all his income and his marginal utility here is the same. And then we have the equal marginal principle, where now the consumer is consuming two products. So they're saying here, my battery. So they're saying here, okay, you just given your marginal utility for good X and your marginal utility for good Y. The price for good X is 2 rand and the price for good Y is 9 rand. Your income is 1 rand and your income is 9 rand. You guys have to listen carefully in this one. But in this one, yeah. So the quantity of each sober team, what quantity of each will you purchase to maximize utility? So if you're given two good, first of all, you have to calculate your marginal utility per rand, which is your marginal utility times price. So here they already calculated for us. So this is how they calculated. So they say 10 times 2. They got, let me just plug the battery on my thingy. The charger, the battery. Let me just plug the battery on my thing. That's so crazy. Okay. So yeah, I was just charging my laptop. Let's continue. They're saying here, okay, no, we want to, what is the question? What is the quantity where the consumer will maximize the satisfaction? So because we have two goods here, we can't just compare the marginal utility. We have to calculate the marginal utility per rand. So we'll say 10 times 2, sorry, 10 divided by 2. Marginal utility per rand is MU over P, which is the price. So 10 times 2, you get 5. And then 8 divided by 2, you get 4. And then 6 divided by 2, you get 3. I hope you guys are calculating as well. 4 divided by 2, you get 2. Then 3 divided by your 1,5. 1,5. This is going to be the longest video. It's going to be difficult for me to upload it as well. So 2 divided by 2, it's 1. That is why I like to keep them short. Okay, so these are your imaginary utility parent. Also, we're going to calculate for this one. They've already calculated for us. I just want to show you guys how it is done. So you're going to say 8 divided by 1. Here you're going to have 8. So this one are going to just retain the same figures because 7 divided by 1 is going to be 7. 6 divided by 1 is going to be 6. 5 divided by 1 is 5. 4 divided by 1 is 4. 3 divided by 1 is 3. So we've calculated our imaginary utility parent. Can you guys see? Okay, so let me just remove it now because on the next slide, they already calculated for us. Now I was just doing it so that you guys can see how it's done. So you can see here, they've calculated for us, and then they want us to find the quantities of each, which will, okay, what quantities of each will you purchase to maximize your utility? So now because we have two goods, first of all, what we have to do, we have to find where your marginal utility per rand is the same. Remember for when we had one good, we had to find where your marginal utility is the same, right? But now we're just going to find where your marginal utility per rand is the same. And I'm going to circle, I'm just going to circle from here. So 5 here, and you have 5 here. Because your marginal utility parent has to be equal. Remember from the conditions we got, your marginal utility parent has to be equal, and also the consumer has to use all her income. So marginal utility parent, I just want to use a different color. Also, we have 4 here and 4 here. And then yeah, I think this is where your marginal utility parent is equal when you have 5, 5, 4, 3, oh, and 3. Then you have your 3 here, and then you have your 3 here. Yeah, that's all. Okay, so after now you have identified where your marginal utility parent is equal to your marginal utility parent for good Y is equal to your marginal utility parent for good X. Now what you have to find is you have to find the quantities now, the combinations where if you purchase them, you're going to use all your income. So let's start for the first one where your marginal utility parent is 5 rand. Okay, let me just write that formula first. Remember guys, that formula that let me just write it here. It said marginal utility for good X divided by the price for good X must be equal to your marginal utility for good Y divided by the price for good Y. And also this is, okay, let me just write it there. Let me just write it here. Your marginal utility for good X divided by your price for good X must be equal to your marginal utility for good Y divided by the price for good Y must be equal to, so your good X is 2 rand, so must be equal to the 2 rand X plus your good Y is 1 rand plus R1 Y. So this, and we know that I did say this must also be equal to your income, or just write Y here for income. And then, so let's just do it here. So if we choose to use the first combination, so we're gonna use, let me use the color red. Okay, it is red. So if when your marginal when your marginal utility parent for good X is 5 and your marginal utility parent for good Y is 5, this person can consume 1 unit of good X and 4 units of good Y, right? But now, will these two meet the second condition? Because the first condition has been made, so good see your marginal utility parent for good Y must be equal to your marginal utility parent for good X. This first condition is met. So this one, second condition, will it be met? Will these two units, by consuming these two units, will the consumer spend all her income? Let's calculate. So you basically say 1 times 2, you get 2 because the price is 2 rand. And then you're going to say 4 times 1, which is 4. You're going to say 2 plus 4, you get 6. So 6 is not, because it has to be equal to 9 rand, his income. So it's 6. So we move on to the next combination. I'm going to cancel this one. Does not satisfy the second condition, even though the first condition is satisfied. So the second combination, we found the marginal utility parent for good X is 4, and the marginal utility parent for good Y is 4. So if the marginal utility is equal, which is 4, this person can consume 4 units of good X and 5 units of good Y. So let's calculate. The first condition is met. So your marginal utility parent for good X is equal to your marginal utility parent for good Y. So the first condition is met. So let's see if now it is also equal to your income. We're going to say 2 times 2, which is the price of good X is 2, you get 4. And then you're going to say 5 times 1, which is the price for good Y, which is 5. So you say 5 plus 2, you get 7. So your income, you didn't use all your income if you purchase 2 good X and 5 units of good Y. So this condition also is out. As much as the first condition is satisfied, the second condition is not, so you cancel. And then we go to the second one, to the third one, where we find the routine. Your marginal utility parent for good X is 3, and your marginal utility parent for good Y is 3. So the first condition is satisfied. So let's try to satisfy the second condition where now your income, it has also to be equal to your income. So when you take when your marginal utility parent for good X is 3 and your marginal utility parent for good Y is 3, the combinations which the consumer can buy is 3 units of good X and 6 units of good Y. So let's calculate. We're going to say 3 times 2, which is the price for good X, which gave us 6. Then we're going to say 6 times 1, which is the price for good Y, which gave us 6. If you say 6 plus 6, you get 12. So we don't have any. So all the conditions are not satisfied. I know, I think I made a mistake. Okay, so for the first one, it's 4 and 1. You guys, I wish this was maybe a Zoom meeting so that maybe you guys can correct me. So this one is 4. And then if you say 2 times 2, you get 4 for this fourth one. And then here you have 5. So you say 5 times 1, you get 5. Oh, this should have been the condition which would satisfy. So guys, this is the answer. I wonder what I did here. This is the answer. Because if you say, let me just use a different color. Let me just use a different color. I'm just going to use green. So this one here, this and this. So you see the condition, the first condition is satisfied because your marginal utility parent is 4 and your marginal utility parent here is also 4. Do you see that? And then we just look at the combinations now. If your marginal utility parent for good Y is 4 and your marginal utility parent for good X is 4, you can purchase 2 units of good X and 5 units of good Y. So let's see if the second condition is satisfied. If the consumer will spend all her income if he purchases 5 units of good Y and 2 units of good X. So 2 times 2 is 4, and then 5 times 1 is 5. So 4 plus 5 is 9. So the consumer's income is 9 rand. So if he purchases 5 units of good Y and 2 units of good X, he's going to use all his income. Therefore, and if you're using this formula now, you would have you'd have your 4 here. So you'd firstly look for your marginal utility of good X times price. Weight is equal to your marginal utility of good Y times price. Then you find its way. Your good X is equal to 4. Your marginal utility parent is equal to 4. And your marginal utility parent also here is equal to 4. And then here you're going to substitute you got 2 this side. So you're going to put your 2 here. Then you got 1 this, you got 5 this side. So you're going to substitute your 5 here. So you say 2 times 2 plus 1 times 5, which gives you 9, which is the same as your income. So the 9 you get here is the same as your income. So yeah, that is it. So let me just remove. You see, guys, I made a mistake then and I went back. So also if you see what's okay, you've ticked all your condition, the first condition, and which is like 5, 4, and 3 here. And also you're not getting the income to be 9. Then go back. Maybe you've made a mistake somewhere. And then we saw we made a mistake. Hey, personally, I made a mistake, and then we found Guti. Actually, the combination was 5 and 2. Okay, so the question here, it's 5 and 2, and then what total utility will you realize? So what total utility will you realize if your combination is 5 and 2? So it's 2 and 5. So you're going to say 5 plus 4, and then plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4. Calculating the total utility of having 5 units, you basically just add your marginal utility until you get here. Then also your total utility for 2 units, you add this plus this, and then you add them together. So you're going to say 5 plus 4, which give you 9. Then also you're going to say 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4, which give, and then you add them both, which will give you 39. Let me check. Okay, they didn't give us the answer. So you get 39. Then say, assume that other things remaining unchanged, ceteris paribus, but that of the price X falls to 1 rand. What quantities of X will you now purchase? So now your X is now 1 rand. The price for X is now 1 rand. So you just come here, you calculate your marginal utility divided by price again. So now your price is 1 rand. So you're going to be 10 divided by 1, which is going to be 10 divided by 1 is going to be 10. 8 divided by 1 is going to be 8. 6 divided by 6. So basically here it's going to remain the same, as well as this side also, because your Y is also, the price is 1 rand. Let's just use this one. So now we're going to find the combination. So guys, did you see what we did here? They say now the price is 1 rand. So the price is no longer 2 rand for good X. So the price for good X is no longer 2 rand. Now it is 1 rand. This is 1 rand. Yo, guys, this is taking so much time. But let me just, I'm almost going towards the end. Yeah, I'm going to finish all the slides. So 1 rand. So guys, and then if you say 1 times 10, you're going to get 10. Sorry, 1 divided by 10, you're going to get 10. 8 divided by 10, you're going to get 6, because now we're calculating marginal utility divided by price. So we want to calculate marginal utility parent. Also here divided by price. And we know if you have your marginal utility is 10 divided by 1, you're going to get the same answer, and so on. Even here, your marginal utility is 8 divided by 1, you're going to get 8. 7 divided by 1 is going to get 7, and so on. So now let's calculate where this consumer will get the maximum satisfaction. So firstly, we find where marginal utility parent for good X is equal to marginal utility parent for good Y. So we find its way here 8 and 8, and then also 6 and 6, your marginal utility parent is equal here. And also 4 and 4. Oh, there's so many possibilities, yeah. Then also 3 and 3. So the first condition is satisfied to say your marginal utility parent for good X should be equal to your marginal utility parent for good Y, sharp. And then the second condition is to say, good team, now the combinations which the consumer can purchase have to be equal to the price. The price is still 9 Rand. So let's firstly do for good for the first combination where the marginal utility parent is 8 Rand. So if the marginal utility parent is 8 Rand, the person can purchase 8 units of good X, 2 units of good X and 1 unit of good Y. So if you say 2 times 1, you're gonna get 2. And then if you say 1 times 1, you're gonna get 1. 2 plus 1, it's 3. So this does not satisfy the second condition, which said that it must be equal to the income of the consumer. So this one is out. This one is out. So the second combination is a attainable where your marginal utility parent for good X is 6 and your marginal utility parent for good Y is 6. And if it is 6, you can purchase 3 units of good X and 3 units of good Y. So let's say 3 times 1 is 3, 3 times 1 is 3, 3 plus 1 you get 6. So not all the income is used, so this one is also out. So let's look at the other one. So we also look at the other combinations where your marginal utility parent is 4. When your marginal utility parent is 4, you can consume 4 units of good X and 5 units of good Y. So if you say 4 times 1, you get 4, and 5 times 1, you get 5. 4 plus 5, you get 9. So this satisfies the first and the second condition. So this is the combination that the consumer must, sorry, 6 way up. This is the condition that the consumer must purchase 5 units of good X and 4 units of good Y. And also to confirm this, you're going to use 1x plus 1y. And then X, you're going to substitute to 4. And then Y, you're going to substitute to 5, which will give you 9. So yeah, guys, I think we are done with this chapter. Because also I think it's going to be difficult for me to upload this video because, guys, I started at what, 4, if I'm not mistaken. It's already past 5. They say assume that other things, okay, we did this one. What total utility will you now realize? Okay, let me just do this one. So they're saying what total utility will you now realize? So we said with team, it's going to be 4 units of good X and 5 units of good Y. So to calculate your total utility, basically, sorry, not this one. We're not using this one because now we're looking at 1 Rand and yeah, 1 Rand for good X and 1 Rand for good Y. So let me just go to this one. So we say gonna consume 4 goods of good X and 5 goods units of good Y, 5 units of good Y. So you basically to calculate your total utility, you're gonna add all of this until you get here. Then you're gonna add all of this until you get here. You're gonna add them together. So you're going to say 10 plus 8 plus 6 plus 4, you get 28 this side. And then plus 8 plus 7 plus 6 plus 5 plus 4. This will give you 58 if you add it together. Guys, let me show you how to calculate total utility before I close this video. Because some of you might be surprised, why am I adding everything like that? It's easy. Because Anity, to get your marginal utility, you say your previous total